Hi, Miss Vaughn. My name is Caitlyn George, and I'm in your Thursday 9:30 a.m. class. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about my 10 research articles and one glow and one grow of each of them. My first article was called Mental Health, Early Intervention and Prevention in Young Children and Young People, and it was by Heather McBride. Basically, it was just about mental health problems rising in children and teens. But it was based off of kids in the UK. But it talked about how having a good mental health would make the child grow into a good and healthy-minded adult. There's little research between the ages of 0 to 5 years old because babies really don't show any traits of mental disorders like kids do. In the UK, more than 10% of 5-year-olds through 16-year-olds have mental health problems, and if left untreated, it could cause physical and educational impairments and shorten life expectancy. Also, half of adults who have mental health disorders were diagnosed as a child, so they catch it quick and it's hard to stop them from it. One glow is it helps teachers understand mental health problems better, and it's important to know these mental health problems because it would help them be able to recognize them in their classroom and stop them, or at least keep them from going forward. It's also showing the importance of early intervention and how much it can help in putting a stop to the disorder. The grow about the article is that I wish it would have talked more about the physical characteristics of a brain with a mental disorder. It would be nice to see what areas are affected, just to know why, like what it's affecting and why it's affecting it. Alright, my second article is one of the kids' parents' perceptions of the developmental advantages arising in inclusion in mainstream childhood education services. It's based off of a Australian study. 3.4% of the population of children in Australia have developmental disorders. This study is mostly about how early intervention can help end those or put a stop to it, and it's just saying that early intervention is just therapeutic services and other health professionals that provide a variety of assessments and services, and it also includes like fit support systems in families and stuff like that. One glow about this article is that it teaches you how to catch the disorder in its tracks and to help what to do with early intervention of it. It also is extremely helpful for early childhood educators and parents, especially if their children do have developmental disorders. A grow is that I wish it would be more specific about what the parents and teachers can do. Because sometimes in that situation, even though you have an idea of what to do, it's hard to figure out what is best to do. So I wish that it would be more specific. My third article is comparison of creativity between children with and without attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and it was by Rosita Davari Ashitani. And it's just talking about how generally ADHD affects your everyday life, academically, in the employment, like in the workplace, in your social life. But it talks about how all articles are usually showing just the negative aspects of ADHD, and that really a child with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder has a very similar mindset to children who are just very creative. And it talks about how they're better problem solvers and better critical thinkers than other children who don't have it, who don't have ADHD. And it talks about how once you put the child on medicines, it decreases the creativity, and so that's why we don't really know much about it, because most kids are medicated. A glow is that it's positive. It's a very positive article. It looks at it at a different perspective, and I like that about it. It's very helpful for early childhood educators and teachers, especially those who deal with ADHD children. And since it's a growing problem, there are more kids who have it. So I feel like most parents and teachers should know how to handle it. A grow is that the study wasn't really strong. It's really a hard comparison because they're not really any different, especially when they're medicated. But it wasn't really good results. They weren't as good as they should have been. Alright. My fourth article was screen-based behavior in school-aged children with long-term illnesses, and it was by Daniela Hasarova and Andrea Mendarasova-Gakova, and it was just talking about how technology plays a significant role in children's life, especially in children who have chronic illnesses such as asthma, because those children aren't able to go out and do all the activities that their peers can do because they have limitations. So they really, rely on technology and devices for to be social. But studies have shown in this article that it can cause behavioral and social problems, and at young ages it can actually lead to learning disabilities. So the goal of this article is that I feel like most educators and parents should read this because it does show how the effect of internet can, cause problems. It's a good thing, but it's also a bad thing. And that it should teach parents and teachers to limit internet use. A grow is that I feel like internet is a very important thing, so I wasn't really with the article. I feel like it connects us a lot, and I'm not sure if it really causes behavioral problems unless the child's playing video games who are that are very violent. Maybe that can cause problems, but I don't believe that it should cause any behavioral problems, especially if you let them use it the right way it's supposed to be used. My fifth article was about it's fatal abusive head trauma among children aged less than 5 years old in the United States between 1999 and 2014, and it was by Erica L. Spies and Joanna Clevens. It's just talking about how abusive head trauma accounts for 1/3 of maltreatment fatalities among infants and children, and that head trauma can include violently shaking the child, stab wounds and gun wounds, and anything that has to do with the brain of an infant, just impact on the brain. It is a grow because it's very extremely important for parents, not only teachers, but also daycare workers and relatives and anyone who deals with children, to notice the signs that if a child's being maybe abused at home, or they're expected of being abused at home, that they should know how to stop it. Because I know it's hard for babies to catch this in babies because they're not in school, but teachers who have children in their classroom who have little siblings, they might be hinting at it or saying something, and you really need to take a step and do something about that, because these abusive head traumas can cause many different learning disabilities, and it could kill them. So it should just be stopped. A grow is that it used a it didn't really show any. I wish it would have showed a case study, a case on it. It didn't really, because you weren't really affected by it. It's sad, but if they would have had a case study in there, it would have been more powerful, and you would have taken more seriousness to it. And so I feel like that's what it should have. Okay, my sixth article is parental insights of the effects on the effects of the secondary transition planning process. And so it basically was just talking about the transition planning process for children in high school who are about to graduate who have disabilities. who are like in special ed classes and stuff, and it's just basically talking about how important the parents' role is in their life and how they should be getting them out there in the workforce and teaching them how to do with money. And it's just, parents are very important, but these parents don't feel like they're recognized in planning the IEP and their transition services. So I feel like the grow about this article is that it helps teachers and other personnel that have to deal with children with disabilities in school should know how to talk with the parents and how to take their parents' insight into consideration, because the parent knows the child way more than the teacher ever will. And I feel like once you know the child to the extent, or know about the child a little bit more than you do, you can better connect with the child and better understand its needs. So I feel like that's very important. But the only thing that's a grow about this article is that since I'm going to be a early childhood educator and teach elementary school, this really doesn't affect me because it's about children who are going on to graduate, unless you're going to be a teacher in that field. But it's nice to know about, just in case you ever feel like you're going to switch grades, or if you're going to go from kindergarten to whatever. But I think it's just something that's nice to know. My 7th article is Outcome of Home-Based Early Intervention of Autism in Sri Lanka, and it was by Himalandi Pereira, Kamal Chamdima Juwandar. Yeah. And it just is characterizing autism and how autism is just how it affects children and how to, it really is a really good article. That's the grow, is that it just explains autism so well, and it's really good for teachers to know about autism because a lot of children have it, and there's just so many different types. And so it's very important for teachers and parents and anyone else who's going to be around children to read this and understand the signs of autism, so you can help and you can give them the special needs that they acquire. A grow, there's not really a grow on this article. I feel like this is very, very important, and that most people should read it. It really helped me better understand autism, and I think that everyone really needs to have that good foundation of understanding it. Alright, my 8th article is Assessment of Personality Characteristics in Parents and Children of Adolescents with Obsessive Compulsive Disorder, and it's by Vicki Miller-Warren. No, it's not. It's by Atefe Sultanifar Fete Morari. And it's just about how obsessive compulsive disorder is just growing in teens and children, and it just explains the differences in personality traits of a parent with a child who has OCD and a parent who has a child who does not have OCD. So a grow about this article is that it's nice to know a little bit about the signs of OCD, because since it is a growing problem, it's good for an early childhood educator to understand them. The grow is that I don't believe it's really relevant to early childhood educators because it's about the parents. It's not really about the child. The study was completely on the personality of the parents. So I feel like it was just a really interesting read, but it's not necessary. Okay. My 9th article is Concurrent Medical Conditions in Autism Spectrum Disorders, and it was by Tanya Celia and Wyona Freisteinson. And it's just talking about how autism is so unique, and every child who has autism is very different, and there's many different disorders and other medical conditions that can go along with it, such as sleeping disorders and immunologic issues like immunodeficiencies and stuff, neurological issues such as seizures. It's just very different. You can look at a kid who has autism and he could be unrecognizable in a group of his peers who don't have it, but then there's other children who have it and they need constant care, and so it's just a range. I feel like this is an extremely important article, as well as, like I said about the last autism one. That's the glow about it. It's just very important because it helps you get a better understanding of the disorder, because you can't really treat autism as a general thing, because since everyone who has it is so different and there's so many different medical conditions that go along with it, you have to really treat their symptoms. You can't just treat it as autism because, it's different. A GROW is that it should have talked a little bit more about treatments. It didn't really talk much about treatments. It just talked about the different conditions. I know it's really hard to treat it, but it's hard. I think it should be touched on because it's important for teachers and parents to know how to maybe not treat it, but at least, not make it as worse, so it doesn't go on to be worse than it is, to stop it in its tracks. Right, my last article is the effect of sensory integration training on executive functions in children with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And it's by Safar Faramarzi and Shirin Arjamandi Rad. And it was just about how attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is a neurodevelopmental disorder, and it causes many psychological problems. And it messes with your frontal lobe. So just talked about the physical aspects of it and how the executive functions that it can harm or mess with is organization, decision making, memory, perception of time, prediction of the future, internal language, and problem solving. What I love about this article is that it really helps teachers and parents notice the early signs of ADHD, because it is a growing disorder, especially among boys. It's really important to notice the signs of it to stop in its tracks or help. But I don't believe, the GROW of it would be, it really should have shown some sort of case study. Like reading our chapters when they have case studies, it makes me feel more understanding of the disorder because I see it in action. I feel like that would have helped much, but it's still a good article because it helps you really, really understand ADHD and the things that it affects, so you better understand a child who has it. And that's it.